Hello. Welcome back to another CNC project video with Legacy Woodworking Machinery. Today we're going to continue on with producing the Convertible China Hutch Project, and we're going to be producing the top rail for the front face frame of the lower cabinet section of this project. Now at first glance, this probably doesn't look like one of the more complicated parts in the project. It's just a rail. But by the time this single piece comes off the CNC, it will already have the hinge mounting holes, hinge pockets, rabbets, IsoLock joinery, and the finished profile, all machined from a single setup. Whenever I have this many critical features depending on one setup, I never assume everything went according to plan. No matter how good the simulation looks, no matter how clean the machining appears, no matter how confident I am in the programming, I always do a dry assembly. Because a CNC can only machine what I programmed. Only the assembly tells me whether I programmed the right thing. Today's part was a perfect reminder of that. Everything looked right, everything measured right, and the machining looked beautiful. And yet when I started putting the parts together, I found something I had completely overlooked. We'll come back to that after the machining is finished. So let's get started. Every successful project starts before the spindle ever turns on. It starts with workholding. For this project, I'm using the horizontal workstation on the Legacy Maverick 4x4 along with the T-slot table and Legacy's low pro clamps. One thing I really like about these clamps is that they don't just push against the material, their angled design also applies downward pressure at the same time. That gives me a very secure hold without placing clamps on top of the workpiece where they could interfere with the cutter later. You'll also notice that the blank is intentionally longer than the finished rail. That extra material isn't waste, it's workspace. It gives the clamps somewhere to hold while keeping them completely outside the machining area during the final profile cut. Those are the kinds of little production decisions that don't usually get much attention, but they make the entire machining process more predictable. Once everything is secure, it's time to start making sawdust. The first operation is establishing the hinge mounting holes. These holes eventually determine where the convertible tabletop pivots, so getting them located accurately is important. I'm using an 1/8 inch drill bit running about 3000 RPM, drilling 1 inch deep at 30 inches per minute. Whenever I'm drilling holes this deep, I'm always paying attention to chip evacuation. If chips begin packing inside the hole, I'll usually switch over to a pick drilling cycle so the drill has a chance to clear itself before continuing. Today, the alder material cooperated beautifully. The chips cleared, the holes drilled exactly the way I wanted. So far, everything was pointing toward a successful part. With the drilling complete, it's time to switch over to the 3/8 inch down spiral cutter. This one cutter is going to do most of the remaining work of this rail. The first job is machining the hinge pockets. These pockets are only a 1/16 of an inch deep, but they still need to leave a clean finished surface because the hinges will register directly against them. Rather than simply clearing the material as quickly as possible, I like rastering the pocket with the grain first. After the material has been cleared, I make one final climb milling pass around the perimeter. That final pass cleans up the edges and usually leaves a much nicer finish with very little tear out. Little programming decisions like that don't take much extra effort, but when enough little decisions start stacking together, the quality of the finished part begins to show it. By now, everything still looked exactly the way I had planned. The holes looked good, the pockets looked good, nothing was giving me any reason to doubt the program. Immediately after the pockets are finished, the machine cuts the rabbets on each end of the rail. These cuts don't take very long, but they do something very important. These rabbets are eventually going to fit into the dados on the left and right face frames. Because of that, I'm much less concerned of how deep the cutter goes, and much more concerned with how much material is left behind. That's why I established my Z0 from the bottom of the material instead of the top. If I referenced everything from the top surface, slight variations in lumber thickness would change the finished thickness of the rabbet. By referencing from the bottom instead, the remaining material stays exactly where I programmed it, regardless of small variations in board thickness. It's a small programming decision, but it's one that makes the assembly much more predictable later on. At this point, every operation had done exactly what I expected. The program was earning my confidence. Now the machine can begin the final profile. This is always one of my favorite parts of the process because it's where everything starts coming together. The same cutter that machined the hinge pockets and rabbets is now freeing the finished rail from the oversized blank. I'm taking 4 passes through this 1.25" alder at about 200 inches per minute while the spindle is turning at around 17,000 RPM. That combination gives me a chipped load that's right where I like it for this cutter and material. One question I get fairly often is why I continue using a down spiral cutter instead of switching to an up spiral or a compression cutter. For this setup, the answer really comes down to work holding. The low pro clamps are already applying downward pressure. The down spiral cutter works with those forces instead of against them. Rather than trying to lift the workpiece, it's constantly pushing the material tighter into the table while it's cutting. Everything in this setup is working together. The clamps, the cutter, the tool pass, even the oversized blank. When every part of the process supports the next one, machining becomes much more predictable. To make sure the part stays exactly where it belongs during the final cut, I also leave small 3D tabs connecting the rail to the blank. Those tabs only have one job: hold on to the part until the spindle has completely finished its work. With the machining complete, it's time to free the part from the blank. The first thing I do is remove it from the machine and head over to the bandsaw to cut away the 3D tabs. The tabs have already done their job. They kept the rail securely attached during the profile cut, and now they only need to be removed without damaging the finished part. From there, I move over to the router table with a flush trim bit. It only takes a few light passes to remove the remaining tab material and blend everything into a finished profile. By this point, the machining is finished. Now I finally get a chance to slow down and really look over the part. This is something I don't think we do enough in woodworking. We spend so much time watching the machine that we forget to study the finished work. This is where I start looking at the details. The edges, the shoulders, the hinge pockets, the drilled holes, the joinery. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for anything that seems different than what I expected, because small details usually become big details during assembly. Everything looked clean. The cutter left a beautiful finish, the hinge pockets looked crisp, the drilled holes were exactly where they needed to be. Honestly, if I had asked me right then whether this part was finished, I probably would have said yes. But there was still one thing left to do. This is my favorite part of the project, the dry fit, because this is where the project finally gets to answer back. The first thing I checked was the IsoLock joint. This was the area I was most curious about. On previous projects, I had been cutting those joints with a 1/4 inch cutter and found that about 10 thousandths of allowance produced the fit I was after. This project is different. The 3/8 cutter is much more rigid. That allowed me to reduce the allowance to 5 thousandths instead. It doesn't sound like a big change, but in joinery, a few thousandths can completely change how a joint feels. As I brought the parts together, the joint seated with exactly the amount of resistance I was hoping for. Not loose, not overly tight, just a nice light press fit. Exactly the way I wanted it. That adjustment worked beautifully, and honestly, that alone made this project worthwhile. Every project teaches you something. Sometimes those lessons come from mistakes, sometimes they come from improvements. This was one of those improvements. At this point, I was convinced everything had gone exactly according to plan. Then I noticed something. Not in the IsoLock joint, nor the hinge pocket or the drilled holes. It was the rabbet. At first it was subtle, just enough to catch my eye. One shoulder wasn't lining up the way I expected, so I looked a little closer. The rabbet on the rail extended about a 1/16 of an inch farther than the matching shoulder on the style. Now here's the interesting part. Nothing had moved, nothing slipped, the cutter hadn't deflected, the machine hadn't made a mistake. It had done exactly what I programmed it to do. The problem was in my programming. Earlier in the project, I made a small design improvement to the styles. Instead of allowing the rabbets to bottom out inside the dados, I shortened them slightly. That teeny relief leaves a little room for glue and makes it much easier for the face frames to pull together perfectly flush during assembly. It was a small change, but it was a good one. The only problem, I remembered to update the styles, but I forgot to update the rail. So while the styles had the new dimension, the rail was still using the old one. The fix is actually very simple. I'll trim that extra 1/16 off on the table saw, then I'll go back into the CAD/CAM file and make that same adjustment to the rail. From that point forward, every rail produced from these files will already include the correction, and that's exactly why I never skip a dry assembly. Because if I had gone straight to glue up, that little oversight would have followed me much further into the project. Instead, it took just a few seconds to find, and a few more minutes to fix. One of the things I appreciate most about CNC woodworking is that every project has the opportunity to improve the next one. When people first get into CNC, it's easy to think the goal is simply making accurate parts. And accuracy is important. But over time, I've found myself chasing something a little different. I'm not just trying to make accurate parts anymore. I'm trying to build an accurate process. Those aren't the same thing. A process expects improvement. A process expects refinement. A process assumes that every project is going to teach you something you didn't know before you started. That's why finding something like this doesn't frustrate me, it actually excites me. Because this wasn't a machining problem, it wasn't a tooling problem, and it wasn't a work holding problem. It was simply one small programming detail that hadn't yet made its way into the finished CAD/CAM file. But now it has. And that means every future rail benefits from what this one taught me. To me, that's one of the greatest advantages of CNC woodworking. Every improvement becomes permanent. The next project starts where the last one finished. That's how a collection of good ideas slowly turns into a refined production process. And I think that's an important mindset, whether you're building one project in your garage or producing hundreds of parts in a professional shop. If there's one thing I'd encourage you to take away from today's project, it's this. Don't judge a part by how it looks coming off the machine. Judge it by how it performs when it becomes part of the assembly. A CNC can machine exactly what you programmed. Only the assembly tells you whether you programmed the right thing. Take the extra minutes, dry fit the parts, challenge your assumptions, verify your process, because those few minutes almost always save hours later. Well, that wraps up the top rail for the front face frame, and that brings us one step closer to the finish assembly of the lower cabinet for the Convertible China Hutch Project. So this is really exciting. I'm really pleased with how this part turned out. The adjustments and tolerances for the IsoLock joints came together quite nicely. The hinge pockets are really clean. Other than the small correction we needed to make for the rabbet joint, I am really pleased with how this came together. If you have any questions about tooling, work holding, programming strategies, joinery tolerances, or anything else that was covered in this video, please leave those comments right down below. We like to read through those comments and they help inspire future videos, but they also help answer questions for fellow woodworkers and CNC users like yourself. Now this next part may not be for you, but we do have project plans available on Legacy's website at legacywoodworking.com/projects. And we'll leave the link in the video description below. But we also have a full calendar schedule of upcoming hands-on workshops where you can register and come to our Legacy facility. You'll learn directly from our team, build real projects, and discover how shops across the country are using the Maverick CNC to produce furniture, cabinetry, architectural millwork, and custom woodworking products faster than ever before. Whether you're looking to grow your business, increase production, or simply build better projects, the Maverick CNC was designed to help you get there. In the next video, we are going to be producing the bottom rail for the front face frame, and this is one of the few components that require a double-sided procedure. So it'll be really interesting how the joinery comes together with that component. You won't want to miss that. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in that next video.